So thank you very much, Maria, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I noted that I was the middle speaker in the program, which is traditionally the moment that your attention starts to flag and you start wishing for the end rather than enjoying the initial part of the program. So I thought let's make this maybe a little bit of a philosophical interlude, also because I know that the next speakers have voluminous sets of slides waiting for you. So I want to make sure that you've got the energy to last until the end of this. So I'm not going to have many slides, but I'd like to offer you a perspective on what I believe and what my organization too believes is a fantastically successful business. And the title of this presentation is one that I like because I update it every year, and anybody in the audience who can place the number 1,465. I don't need any answers called out, but anybody wishing to raise their hand who think they have the answer to what the number stands for. Which is pretty good because, and indeed, as all of you will be fully aware, it is the number of offshore wind turbines that in UK waters either operating or in construction, or with committed finance. So that is a significant number, and I like the title because each year I don't have to think about the title, I just update the number on the presentation. These turbines are part of the pool that is on this slide. So this is the pool of hardware assets that we have developed as a sector over the past 14 years, and 1,115 turbines operating, the offshore substations, the met masts. We've built a fleet of offshore wind met masts, of which 23 are currently operating and sending data back to shore, 3 more in construction. That's 26 data points sending data, very detailed mid-ocean data, every minute, every 3 seconds, whatever sampling interval back, and it's tremendously helping us to understand the resource. And one of the reasons that as Crown Estate we are enthusiastic about offshore wind is because we recognize its potential. Its potential in terms of contributing to the UK's ever-growing need for power. So have a look on the slide on the left-hand side. So this is the amount of electricity produced on an annual basis ever since those first 2 turbines at Blyth back in 2000. And last year, 3.3% of all electricity consumed in the UK was generated by offshore wind turbines. Now, we are on track with the construction of those 1,465 turbines to be, on average, providing 5% of the UK's power needs from wind from sea. In fact, that 5% limit was comfortably met in December and January of this year because we were, of course, having some very windy months. But look at where it's going. And with the financing that has been committed by the government, and yes, I know that there has been somewhat of maybe an investment plateau that is caused by the transition in the due to the EMR regime, but the committed finance from the contract for differences through the FID enabling process, or with projects able to meet the renewables obligation commissioning deadlines, we're on track to be doubling the 5 gigawatts that we currently have by the end of this decade. So that is 10 gigawatts of capacity that's comfortably, with cost reduction, much more potential. So that is doubling 5% to 10%. So by the end of the decade, we will have, 1 out of every 10 electrons coming out of our sockets will come from the sea. And that's a tremendous achievement. And in the years beyond, we will see this number increase further, easily doubling, up to about 20%, without any technical glitches, easily integratable into the UK power system. Now, I'm a little bit of an old-fashioned guy, so I still read newspapers. When I've been reading the newspapers over the last couple of months, year, you might sometimes think that it is doom and gloom in our sector. And let me just identify 4 projects that have made the headlines, and there is no quizzes for the right answers. But these projects have made the headlines in the last half year because they are projects where developments have been discontinued. And invariably, the headlines in the press would be about this sector in decline, in withdrawal, etc. Well, we couldn't understand that. I could not understand that. Because, yes, these are projects which have been abandoned because they were too challenging, they would turn out to be too costly, sometimes just a little bit too early. They don't work with the technology of today. They need the technology of a few years ahead. So, but these projects have captured the headlines. But other projects have captured the headlines. And the ones I was talking about, the FID enabling, about renewables obligation, all those projects, you will recognize the projects and projects which have a real opportunity to meet the renewable obligations deadline. There are some other projects here which assertive developers would argue, but we're also able to meet this renewables deadline. And then there are the projects that will be successful in the allocation round in October, as Caroline was talking about. So we've got a huge market of investment that is ahead of us. In fact, we're going to be building over the next 5-6 years as much wind power as we've been building in the past 14. Well, that is a huge market, tremendous opportunity, and it is providing tremendous certainty to the sector. A lot of people talk about what's happening beyond 2020, and I will talk about that a little bit. But the launchpad can't be better. We cannot be in a better place than the place that we're in here in the UK. The total portfolio, and indeed you could see that also on Bruce's slide, huge opportunity ahead of us. And of course, some of that is going to hit the headlines in the very same way as the projects like the Atlantic Array have been hitting the headlines, because developments will be discontinued on a number of those sites in years to come. Why? Because this is a sector like oil and gas. This is Aberdeen. Everybody in Aberdeen understands that when you explore for oil and gas, that you carry out exploration surveys. Sometimes you find oil, sometimes you find gas, sometimes you find salty water. So it doesn't always work out, and these projects don't always work out. These developments don't always work out. But the opportunity is tremendous, and the challenge is, how do we increase the size of the pie? And I think that is back to ourselves. So if I summarize and maybe also look forward, we are the leading market. It is a combination of resource that we as a landlord care about and of policy. Not only policy of today, but policy of 15 years and longer back. There is a very firm growth path out to 2020 and beyond. And yes, things need to happen, so costs need to come down, which is why the program board is there. Yes, the performance of these assets needs to work in an environmental and in an economical context, and that's why Andrew will be, for example, talking about Project Sparta that we're doing together with Catapult. And attracting capital is a challenge, but the opportunity is there. And just ask yourself the question, if you're developing one of these real big round 3 sites, you're faced with a world that is a bit daunting because you've got an allocation round coming up with relatively limited budget. How are you going to make that work? And you look at the government, you could look at the government and say, government, you need to solve my problem. I would like to flip that back to the sector and to say, what is the irresistible offer that the offshore wind sector can create and can put at the feet of the government to say, here is an irresistible offer that allows you to invest in my projects such that we can develop the many gigawatts that are out there. And that will require a new way of collaboration between project developers and between supply chain to drive out the inefficiencies. It will require a new forms of contracting, and with that we will be able, as a sector, to create that irresistible offer where wind power hasn't have to cost so much that it is deemed to be unaffordable, but an irresistible offer for the government to take up and for the sector to continue growing. And with that, on track, I would say, to 20% of the UK's power supply in years to come. Thank you very much.